Hey, what's up you guys? This is Rob from The Gay Guy Plays, and on today's snapshot, we'll be doing it while no one's looking, when we take a look at Loki's invisibility build. So the premise of this build is to optimize Loki's invisibility to the point where Energy Siphon will regenerate invisibility's energy cost, thus allowing you to recast invisibility almost indefinitely. Now the cool thing about this build is as long as you have the core mods, there's actually a lot of customizability available. This build works well for practically any faction. However, there is one thing to note. Just because you can copy and paste a build does not make you a part of the Loki master race. While invisibility does make things a ton easier, there are a lot of subtle nuances in playstyle that differentiate a good Loki player versus a bad Loki player. And one of those is how you handle different factions, from their extremists even down to their own tile set. Tailoring your playstyle and even making a few small changes to your build in order to suit the faction is the mark of an experienced Loki player. Now, Loki's invisibility makes you visually undetectable by enemies, making it much easier for you to stealth through missions. Stealth has some awesome bonuses as it keeps enemies in an unalert state. Unalert enemies are susceptible to stealth finishers, which deal a massive amount of finisher damage that completely ignores armor and shielding. They are also primed for you to take advantage of the stealth damage multiplier, which grants your standard melee attacks a 4x damage increase. Now, do be aware, while enemies may not be able to see you, there are other forms of detection that will alert them to your presence. First and foremost, firing off non-silenced weapons will cause all enemies within earshot to become aware of your presence. This will typically put them into high alert, preventing you from using stealth finishers. They'll trigger alarms, call for backup, and a few may even attempt to attack the area the sound originated from. Another way you can inadvertently reveal your presence is through the actions of your Kubro. While invisible, you seem to be able to perform as many stealth finishers as humanly possible without detection. However, your Kubro's takedowns don't seem to have that same effect. Bad Linden! Bad Linden! And finally, you can also alert targets to your presence via collision. Collision occurs when you make physical contact with an enemy unit. This typically occurs when you bump into them as you're running through an area, or even when performing a melee combo. The important thing to note about a collision is that once it occurs, you will not be able to use a stealth finisher on your target, and your standard non-finisher melee attacks will momentarily lose their stealth damage multiplier. However, just give it a second or two and your multiplier should return. Now as for the snapshot, I personally have a little more Forma on the classic Loki than I actually need. You'll only really need an additional D slot for the build I've been using. However, if you want to be able to play around with different variations, you may want to add in a dash slot as well. As for Loki Prime, you won't actually need any Forma for this one. Now, as for the build, it's pretty standard using narrow-minded and prime continuity to bring invisibility's duration to 25 seconds, factoring in the 3 ranks in fleeting expertise. In that time, Energy Siphon will replenish 15 points of energy, which is the exact cost of invisibility with the included efficiency mods. Do take note if you do not have Prime Continuity maxed, you will need to include Constitution in order to push your duration a little bit further. Just be aware that this will eliminate one of your variable slots. Now, as for the flexible parts of the build, I personally like the 69% boost that the extended range mods give, so that I can still make use of radial disarm. If you're running into some survivability issues, you can feel free to slot in a prime flow and quick thinking as supplements to your max redirection and vitality. Note, while quick thinking and prime flow look really good on paper, their actual usage isn't as good as most people make it out to be, but that'll take a whole nother video for me to go over. Regardless, feel free to do whatever you want to do with these last 2 slots, whether it's natural talent, constitution, rush, or whatever else tickles your fancy. And by fancy, I mean genitals. So, a couple tips and tricks. First off, just because you're invisible doesn't mean that you're invincible. Loki has the lowest base health and shields in-game, so you'll still need to be aware of bombard rockets, corpus grenades, extremis auras, stray bullets, and a shit ton of other things. You are not safe, so mind your surroundings. In that same vein, the second you come out of invisibility, recast it and move. Enemies have a tendency of firing at your last known location, so don't be surprised if you're under fire even if you're out of sight. Lastly, watch your timer. Do not attempt to revive anyone in the heat of battle unless you're sure you have enough time left to get them up safely, because when you turn out as many tricks as Loki does, the last thing you want to do is get caught in the act. So thank you all for watching another episode of The Snapshot. If you're curious about my radial disarm build, I'll toss you a link to that one. And if you're into grabbing a ton of booty, I'll link you to my most recent snapshot on Hydroid's Pilfering Swarm. Now don't forget to do all the things that I ask you to do at the end of every one of these, and as always, stay tuned for more tips on how to take your targets from behind here at A Gay Guy Plays. And I got gay shamed for not being gay enough. I was like, damn it. I was like, God, I gotta up my gay levels. I gotta be extra gay. You know, I need to start a YouTube channel where I talk about dicks and like buttholes. I never stopped.
Jesus.